Hello out there. My name is Ole Kagan, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with LA County Library, and I welcome you to Work Ready, Best Practices for Future-Proof Resumes. And now I'd like to tell you about the Work Ready program. Work Ready started in December of 2020 with the purpose of helping people get a job, improve their work situation, and plan a more sustainable career path. We do that in two ways. Number one, we lend out laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots out of 27 library locations for 6-week periods. And that just breaks down one barrier for folks who are applying for a job or getting online training. And the second is we provide virtual programs just like this one on a range of work-related topics from basics like resumes, today's program, to cover letters, interviews, deep dives into various careers and other subjects that will help you succeed at work. And you can see over 50 of those past classes at any time by checking out the work and career playlist on our YouTube channel, which I'm going to post in the chat right now. And note, this program as well is being recorded, and it will be sent to you via link in the follow-up email, and will be on our YouTube channel for you to rewatch and share as needed at your leisure. Now, before we move on, I would also like to tell you that this Work Ready program is made possible due to funds provided by the American Rescue Plan, and share with you our next program. I don't have the registration link yet, but I want to let you know so you can save the date if you're interested in the topic. And that date is October 10th at 11 a.m. It's a Tuesday. And the topic is managing stress, compassion fatigue, and burnout. If you are on the edge or have been on the edge before, whether during work or not, this program is for you. We're going to be talking about how to manage stress, compassion, fatigue, and burnout. I'm going to post the description of that for you in the chat so you can see it. And then the registration link will be available in the next couple of weeks, but put it in your calendar so you have that program and that time set aside. And if you'd like to learn more about our virtual or in-person events, you can do that at our website, lacountylibrary.org. On the top right-hand side, click the events, and that gives you all the events, in-person, virtual, for kids, adults, older adults, teens. All, of course, of our programs are free and accessible to you. And if you're only interested in the virtual events, we have those listed separately as well. And you can find just the Zoom events by hovering over that events button, and a little drop down will come up, Kit Virtual Programming, and you'll see all the events just like this one, which can be accessed from anywhere. All right. And now it's time to move on to our program for the day. And to do that, I'm going to introduce our presenter, Allan Brown. Allan is a native New Yorker who moved to San Francisco after completing his master's in industrial relations and human resources at Rutgers University. Allan's career took a major career pivot away from HR when he was presented an opportunity to become a marketer in the magazine publishing industry. In 1998, Allan transitioned to digital publishing, assuming leadership roles in marketing, audience development for both established and startup web publishers. After around 10 years of working in digital media, Allan's entrepreneurial spirit got the best of him, and he started writing resumes as a freelancer before parlaying his skills into a full-time business in 2011. And he'll be covering today for you best practices for future-proof resumes. And with that, I welcome Allan Brown.
Thank you for having me this morning. I appreciate it. Greetings from foggy and gray cream of mushroom soup sky, San Francisco. Hope everybody's doing well. I haven't been down to LA in a while. I love LA. I always have loved LA, and I hope to get down there sometime in the next couple months for at least 3 or 4 days of fun and relaxation. But more importantly, let's talk about resume writing. I've been doing resumes for quite some time. One thing that I didn't include in the bio is that it's kind of a family thing. My dad used to do resumes back in New York, where I'm from, back in the 70s and early 80s for all the kids in the neighborhood. So it wasn't the family business, but it was something that I certainly took a liking to. And when it came to time for me to move and test my entrepreneurial spirit, it was really kind of a no-brainer. So I've been doing this is a full-time business that I've been doing. I do resumes, cover letters, and LinkedIn profiles. And what we're going to discuss today, I'm going to start off a little bit differently than I normally would, but this will all tie together. We're going to be talking about resume preparation, but we're going to be talking first about ageism and secondly about applicant tracking systems before we start to get to the meat and potatoes of actually building out a resume. I'll be using the chat function all throughout so that I can be able to keep everybody on track with the subject matter that I'll be speaking to. I'll be addressing questions at the end of the seminar, but I will also address certain questions and inquiries as we move forward here as relevant to the subject matter. But ageism, which will be the first subject that I'm going to end up speaking about today, ageism is a real deal, and it's something that we all need to kind of understand, because if we don't understand ageism, we're all going to end up getting caught wondering why we're not getting jobs and so forth. It is real. I live in San Francisco, the hub of technology, and that is probably the number one industry violator of all age discrimination, throughout the world, let alone in the United States. The Age Discrimination Act of 1967 prohibits discrimination based upon age for hiring, promotions, termination/discharge, compensation, and any other terms and conditions of employment. But I'll tell you flat out, it is incredibly difficult to enforce. And if you feel that you are a victim of ageism, you should be making sure you keep a diary and that you're logging this information, because you can claim you're a victim of it, but to be able to prove it, two entirely different things. And ageism really has nothing to do with your ability to do the work. Ageism has only to do with their willingness to pay you. So with that being said and understood, in order for you to be able to stay relevant and to be able to relevant employed and be able to earn the levels of pay that you're looking for, I recommend to everybody only go back on your resume 10 to 12 years. It is a best practice. You don't have to go back to 2002 on your resume. You start going back too far, you're going to make your victim of ageism. Because even if for argument's sake, if you're 48 years old, okay, they're going to feel that they have to pay you $1, but they can find a 33-year-old and pay you 45 and pay them 45 cents. What do you think they're going to do? I mean, that's the way that companies run their businesses. They're always looking to be able to cut costs. So one way to stay relevant and to combat ageism is always stay on top of your technology skills. Keep learning the new technologies that become available. Microsoft Office has been around for a while, but Google Docs has been around for about 10 years. A lot of companies are moving to Google Docs. Make sure you become Google Docs proficient. Make sure that when you have opportunities for professional development, to take training classes and even certification classes, I totally recommend that everybody gets involved in that and does that, and keep updating that. And then when you have finished the training and you finish the certification, jot it down, be sure to add it to your resume, but also add it to your LinkedIn profile. By having this information handy and showing the dates, it shows that your continuing dedication to professional development will continue to showcase you as a vital contributor and not somebody who is just resting on their laurels looking to get a paycheck. I know that sounds a little bit cold and callous, but that's how employers are looking at it, and you need to stay on top of your game in order to be able to remain competitive. It's the way it is, especially in California and especially in the technology sector. In the public sector, I'm sorry, it still remains relevant, but there's more protections for employees. But in order to be considered for merit increases as well as for promotions within the organization, you do want to show your willingness to continue to learn and to develop your skills. Ageism is real. Um, Keep it simple. Only go back 10 to 12 years on your resume. It's not really necessary to go back further. Like I said, it is a best practice, but always show that you're vital and always show that you are a collaborator and a contributor. That is of main importance concerning ageism. Any questions concerning ageism at this point? If you have some, please put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to be able to address them for you. Now, the ageism conversation will roll into the actual best practices for writing resumes. So there'll be some repeat here, but that repeat is important, and you'll see how it winds in. There is a question here. Let me read this through. If you've been out of the workforce raising a family, how do you represent work experience that was 20 years ago? If you've been out of the workforce raising a family and so forth, one of the things that you would want to be able to show are some of the things that you've done, whether if you're raising a family, whether it's within the schools that your children are attending or within the community. So you don't want to have your resume end at 2003 and have nothing there. Say you would indicate that as as a homemaker, uh, been actively involved in local community events as well as school fundraisers, etc., to be able to show that you've stayed on top of your skills, but not just say I've been involved in them. Talk about what you've done. Talk about your successes. If you've managed fundraising projects for the school, talk about your vendor, your understanding of selecting vendors, of planning events, of doing if you're doing donor development / fundraising, how much money you were able to fundraise, your different ways that you went about fundraising. Show that you've remained vital over this period with professional business skills used in a non-traditional environment. So another question here I have, and I'll try to answer all of them as I can. And at the end of the conversation, you can always put them in an email, and I'll be happy to address them by email as well. Question here concerning graduation dates. That's an interesting thing. I Ageism actually affects everybody from the years 18 to 80. So with graduation dates, I'm very you look at them on a catch as catch can basis. I am always looking to try to make somebody younger. And you don't have to put your graduation date on. Companies cannot ask you when you graduated, what your graduation date is. It's actually against the law to do that. There's only certain questions they can ask. They might go ahead and ask it on the premise that they're going to ask it until told not to. But I would not be putting graduation dates on resumes unless in certain situations where you're looking to make the applicant look a little bit younger, you might want to put that on. But otherwise, I would keep them off as much as possible. If another question here from Lawrence: will ageism be prevalent in human services, counseling, and therapists? It's relevant across all industries, across all job classifications. It always has been, and it always will be. Every situation is a little bit different, but it is something that you should always keep in mind. Everybody needs to understand about ageism and the ramifications of it. We can certainly continue. Lawrence, if you have additional questions, why don't we can continue this, after through email and then by phone as well. I want to answer as many questions as I can. Russell asked, should we limit our job history in LinkedIn to just last 10 to 12 years? Absolutely. I write a lot of LinkedIn profiles. I do over 100 a year. My LinkedIn profiles are based upon best practices, and they are consistent with the resume. If I have a resume that only goes back to 2012, and I have a LinkedIn profile that goes back to 1998, you're going to make you a victim of ageism. LinkedIn is the first place that employers are going to go to validate your background and also to see if they know anybody in your network to do a background check. Some of that is actually illegal because it's only certain things you could do with background checks here in the state of California, but nonetheless, that is true. Make your LinkedIn profile consistent with your resume in terms of titles, employers, and dates. I write LinkedIn profiles a little bit differently. LinkedIn is a whole nother discussion we could do for 2 hours, but in this case here, keep it consistent. I consider that to be incredibly important. Any other questions with ageism? Just you'll have my email address. Write to me. I'll get back to everybody as fast as I possibly can. But let's move forward and let's go to applicant tracking systems. I'm typing into the chat here. Applicant tracking systems are also known as ATS. This has become the 1,500-pound gorilla of the job search game. Applicant tracking systems are scanning software tools or artificial intelligence that companies are using and government agencies are using to be able to determine qualifications of employment. Their main premise is to be able to scan for job titles, education, keywords, and geography. So I'll repeat that in here. It's going to be geo, keywords. Sorry, I can't type. Education, job titles. I Applicant tracking systems cannot read graphs, charts, logos, tables. Many can't even read PDF files. I write resumes in single column format, text driven. So if you are writing your resume and you have that little pretty, email icon next to your email address, my recommendation is get it out. It's going to block the scanners and you'll be disqualified. It's incredibly important, in terms of applicant tracking systems, that you do the best you can to be compliant. The problem is that there's no standardization in the job search slash human resources slash recruiting industries for applicant tracking systems. And because of that, there's a lot of applicants end up getting eliminated for things they should never get eliminated from. So when you have your resume, just stay with the facts. Take out any of the pretty pictures. Never have your picture on the resume, because that is not a bona fide occupational qualification for employment. And a lot of companies, by their own internal rules, will have to rule you out. And there are some that will interpret federal law as making that illegal as well. And yes, I know you see it all the time, but by seeing it all the time doesn't make it legal. It's actually only detrimental. It is a discriminatory issue concerning race, concerning gender, and concerning age. And like I said, it won't get through the applicant tracking systems. So the applicant tracking systems are a necessary evil. Always have on your resume your zip code. If you have your zip code on the resume, you will have a better chance of getting through the applicant tracking systems. That will be the geo. They can't search by Los Angeles, California, but they can search by 90217, which is one of the zip codes for Los Angeles. So they can search within 50 miles of that. There's been technology out there that can do that for 25 years. So always try to keep always keep your zip code on the resume. If you are relocating to, let's say, San Francisco, then you put a San Francisco address and zip code. You don't have to have your physical address. San Francisco, California, 94123. That's where I live. And by having that on, if they're looking for somebody within 50 miles of 94123, you'll pop up. Now, that's not cheating, because if you're applying for a job in San Francisco and you want to work in San Francisco, they will ask you, it looks like you are not living in San Francisco, but you want to be here. Your answer is going to be, yes, I want to work in San Francisco. I am looking to relocate to San Francisco. And if I don't change the zip code on the resume, we're not going to have this conversation. If they don't understand that, then the problem's on their side. But the fact is, you're being honest, you're being truthful, you're being sincere, and you're giving yourself a chance. If they look at your resume and you have an LA zip code and it looks like all your work history is in Southern California, you might not get the call. You probably actually won't get the call, because you won't even get through the scanning software tools. Applicant tracking systems are powerful, but unfortunately, there's no standardization. So this is all about the best practices for handling the applicant tracking systems. The applicant tracking systems have also changed the game. If you remember, for those of you who have been in the workforce for more than 10 years, the title of your resume was usually the title of the position that you hold. Well, that's all changed now because of applicant tracking system. The headline or title of your resume needs to be the title of the job that you are applying for. So if you are applying for a director of social services position and your title might be senior manager of social services / case management, the title of your resume is the title of the job you're applying for. It's director of social services. That's the best practice for the applicant tracking system. That's what the majority of the software programs are looking for. Always keep that in mind. I consider that to be critically important. The applicant tracking systems are also looking for keywords. Now, in resumes, as you've probably seen, there's always a core, in most modern resumes, you're going to find a core competencies / core skills / areas of expertise section in the resume. These are keywords. That's all they are. It's just a synonymous term for it, nothing more and nothing less. And this is where, as you're reading through a job description, if it's director of social services and they're looking for somebody with very strong case management experience, exposure to mental health issues, um, all the different types of the different types of functions that are done in director of social services, managing budgets, people management, etc. This is where you would do the substitution in and out of keyword for the keywords for each resume. These substitutions are based upon the job description. It is meant to match. It is not a paraphrase. So if you're reading through when they're looking for somebody, we are looking for somebody with extensive experience dealing with mental health issues, then you're going to use the term mental health. If they're looking for, as part of that, they might be looking for somebody. We are looking for somebody with people management, case management, and community involvement. Then you would use case management, people management, and community involvement as part of the keywords. This is all very important so that you can come up higher in the algorithm. The last thing is, and this gets a little touchy with some people, and I can understand why, because some people have not had the opportunity to be able to complete their education. So I don't have a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree. I'm just not going to include education. But applicant tracking systems are looking for the education, especially if the job says we are looking for somebody with the equivalent of a bachelor's of science degree. Well, you got to have the education. And if you have some coursework, I tell all my clients who have not finished, I go, I'm sorry that you didn't finish. I understand that could be frustrating for you. And you left it off your resume, but did you take one course in college? And if they have, then let's add it in. So it could be coursework in social work management, Los Angeles Community College. At least you have something on there to be able to get through. And then if they can identify that you had some of the coursework, then when it finally gets to somebody reading it, if you can we're trying to get you through the algorithm. And once we can get you through the algorithm, if they can say, okay, this is somebody who is actually has a great amount of experience, but they don't have the degree, but their experience is so strong, let's talk to them. There's somebody who would be valuable for us. The applicant tracking systems are a way of the game. I have ways that I would work around it, and this is not being fishy. I think that there's better ways to do it, and we can eliminate applicant tracking systems. That's for a whole nother discussion. But I understand why companies have them, and companies and government agencies. They get too many resumes. They got to have a way to be able to filter through. And some of these jobs, you get 400, 500, 600 resumes. They can't read them all. So the applicant tracking system helps them. We have to understand that that's part of the game, and that we have to have resumes that are called applicant tracking system compliant. That's going to bring us to the next phase of the conversation, which will be resume prep. But let me take a look at some of the questions here and answer them for you. Any advice on applying for jobs in other countries? Do we add a zip code on our resume that is in that country? Yes, that goes back to the zip code and postal codes are synonymous terms. If you're applying for a job in the UK and or even Canada's a 6-digit postal code, I would always add that in. I think I would think that is important. For Russell, in this day and age of remote work, should we have the employer city, state, and zip code on the employment history? That will go more to resume preparation, but to address the question, I would go, Russell, I don't know your job title, but let's just say project manager, ABC company, um, Santa Monica, California, and then in parentheses, you can put remote. I hope that would address your question. And if it, like with the questions I don't answer, just send me the email and I'll be happy to be able to take a look at those. So, if in terms of minimum and maximum skills that Javon has asked for, um, I I wouldn't say there's a minimum maximum because it's all dependent upon the job description that you're reading, the job posting. So most of the time it's going to be between 3 and 5. Some job postings are very comprehensive, therefore you'll probably have about 5 lines. Those that are not so comprehensive, look at it as 2 to 3 lines, and you can just start using some of your more daily use skills if they're not mentioned in the job description. I have some resumes that go up to 6 lines, but those are really much more for senior level. In terms of sharing examples of LinkedIn, I'd be happy to do that, but that would be offline. Please, Sandra, send me an email after this, and I will respond back, accordingly for best practice for writing, for writing LinkedIn. So with all of that being said, there's a lot of questions coming in. I wish I could get to all of them now, but either I'll get to them at the end or I will get to them privately. But let's go to resume preparation. So resumes, we've seen the evolution of resumes going from just one-page documents to I've even seen some going into CVs where people who are working in private industry are using CVs where we have 8 or 9 pages. But let's talk about standard resumes this morning. Resume can be more than 1 page, but never more than 2 pages. The game has changed. And when I hear people talk about the resume has to be 1 page, I kind of call it timeout because the information that I spoke about with the applicant tracking systems, with the keyword section / core competency section, and so forth, all being located towards the top of the resume is mandatory. And when you have a headline in the resume combined with the professional summary, most resumes, especially if you are more than 10 years in the workforce, are going to go to a second page. My rule is it can be more than one, never more than two, should only go back 10 to 12 years. And you should never on the most recent jobs, don't take out content. Don't challenge the integrity of your resume based upon the length by just chopping out content on the cutting room floor. Don't leave the good stuff on the cutting room floor. You have 2 pages, play with the 2 pages. If you start putting in like major accolades going back to 2011, 2010, that's probably a little bit much if it goes to the third page, but front load it and make sure that you have your skills, your functions, and your success stories, in the in the last several jobs, and it can go to 2 pages. In terms of the resume, and this is actually leads back a little bit to age discrimination. I'm one of those guys. I'm pretty much a stickler for anything that I see that's too old. If you're using a Hotmail address or an AOL address on your resume, that's showing signs of ageism. It's also showing signs of not really being on top of the latest trends and so forth in technology and technology, and most specifically communications. Try to stay away from the Hotmail addresses. A lot of Hotmail email ends up in spam boxes, as does AOL. I would go with I would really kind of honestly go with you can go with gmail.com, outlook.com, me.com, iCloud.com, and so forth. att.net is okay as well, but stay away from the older domains. The legacy domains just scream ageism right off the top of the resume. The zip code section, which is I alluded to here just a moment ago, always have your city, state, and zip code on the resume. If you're going for remote work, it's okay to have on there. Okay, because they're going to want to know where you are, and they have every right to know where you are. If the job is a hybrid role, then you want to have your resume on because they want you to come in 2 or 3 days a week. They want you within 40 miles of where they are, and if you guys are all in LA and you're applying for an LA zip code for a job in LA and you all live in LA, they're going to want to make sure you're local so that you can come in 2 or 3 times a week. Never take your zip code off the resume. I alluded to it before, and I'm re-emphasizing it again. I see incredible amounts of resumes where they don't want to tell people where the applicants want to tell people where they live, so they go to San Francisco Bay Area. I'm like, that's a recipe for just not getting not getting answered at all and falling below the threshold of the applicant tracking systems in the way that they evaluate talent. Plus, if it's getting read, they're going to be like, okay, they live in the Bay Area, but that doesn't tell me very much. And they're going to be like, why are they hiding this? It's very simple. Just give the city, state, and zip code. It's gonna make your life an awful lot easier. Um, the the headline slash title of your resume we spoke about before, that's critical for the ATS, but it's also critical for the reader and their eyeballs. I call them eyeballs. I know that sounds crude, but it breaks it down to the lowest common denominator. The title of the resume matches the title of the job you're applying for. I'm re-emphasizing it again, but it's that critical. So you do want to make sure that you have all of that information is put in there, and that is valuable. It is incredibly valuable, and you need to be able to have that in there. Objective statements, I mean, that's really passe for the last 10 or 15 years. To me, the real estate at the top 1/3 of the resume, which is going to be everything above the professional experience, is the most important part of the resume. And that's we have our name, and then we have our address, city, state, zip. We don't have, I need to backtrack just a sec. We don't need to have street address. We don't want to have that on there for identity theft reasons. Yeah, the world's kind of gone south, so we need to be cognizant of that. And we don't need that to have that for physical security. But you do want to have your phone number on there. You do want to have them to be able to contact you. So, and of course, the email address. So you want to give them two options for contact, and you want to be able to give them, let them know where you live for the applicant tracking systems, whether it's remote, whether it's hybrid, or whether it's going to be in-person work. I don't think there's any reason to take any of that off. It's, as I mentioned before, it's critically important. Just as important, though, is the professional summary. And the objective statement has become antiquated. The objective is obvious. The objective is to get a job. But that is valuable real estate at the very top of the resume, and you need to have that in there. And it's going to be 4, 5, or 6 lines. You can do it in a bulleted format, or you can do it in a paragraph format, or you can do it in a hybrid bullet and paragraph. And I'd be happy to send samples, by email at the conclusion of our conversation if you contact me by email of 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 a sample resume that you'll be able to take a look at and understand the layout of the format. The resume needs to be a single column format. You can use the paragraph or you can use some bullets in there as well. The summary is a great place for you to be able to tell the reader, this is who I am and this is what I offer. It's an overarching summary. You look at it as your 35,000-foot elevator pitch. Let them know who you are and what you have. So if you're a project manager, you would say project manager with with 5+ years experience managing operational projects that have resulted in improved cost controls, process efficiency, etc. And then you can talk about collaboration, you can talk about multitasking, vendor management, and different things in there that is pertinent to your role as a project manager. So always make sure that the summary is pertinent to the direction you're looking to go. If the job title, for instance, is project manager, and you're talking about financial analysis and management of some financial projects, that's fine, but really try to hit it more on project management as opposed to financial analyst. You want it to be consistent with what they are looking for. And within your scope of work that you've done in the past, you should be able to find examples and qualifications that would be consistent with what they are looking for. 5 or 6 lines with bullets or paragraph, either is fine, but really no objective statement. The next section of a resume is where we want to put our core competencies, core skills, signature strengths, and these are just keywords. So as I type here in the chat section, core competencies equals keywords. They're the same thing, and as I mentioned before, and this can be 3 to 5 lines and taken from the job posting. So make sure it correlates with the job posting. Applicant tracking systems read black and white. They don't read gray. So if they're looking for somebody, they go project management experience. Don't put down project coordination. Make it project management. Make it apples to apples. Don't paraphrase. Paraphrasing will not help very much as well. Keep it simple. Don't overthink it. These sections here that I just spoke about are mandatory for any resume. They will take up the top 33%, maybe to the top 40% of page one. One reason why resumes can be more than one page, but they can never be more than 2 pages. Let me take a look at some questions here before I go any further. One question here, by putting the title of the job you want, it's not the title you're currently holding. Is that misleading? Maybe I'm not understanding this correctly. No, it is not misleading because basically the new norm is that you're making it easy for the reader to be able to know the job that you are applying for and that you're interested in. Remember, they get a ton of resumes, often for multiple positions. Let's not make them guess. And again, it's about being applicant tracking system compliant. So don't look at it as I'm lying, I'm being misleading, because you're not lying, you're not being misleading. This is the accepted best practice. To Raj, can I have a Microsoft Word table with my core competencies below the professional summary? No, not a Word table, Raj. Put it in it's a single column format. The table that you're talking about here, unfortunately, will block most applicant tracking systems. And if it blocks the scanners, that means there's a very strong chance that you will end up getting disqualified. Just put it into a row format, separate it. You can separate it by copying and pasting a bullet in, or you can use a line separator. If you send me an email at the end, I'll be happy to to show you some samples. In fact, at this point, I'll put my email in. You'll have it a little bit later, but let's put it in just so we can. I will try to get back to everybody. It might not be today, but I will get back to everybody during the course of the week. I promise you. So, can ATS? This is to Russell. Can ATS systems read white text, white font on white background? Yes, they can. And if you do it, you're automatically disqualified. And if you're putting it out there for a Google search online, Google will eliminate you and they'll delete it. Don't use white font. It's deceptive. It's a really bad practice. It has been for a long time. I would recommend that. I would really recommend that you don't use white font under any circumstances. It's called keyword stacking, and it's a really bad practice. So, going back here, how do you highlight experiences? And this is from Megan. How do you highlight experiences and expertise without being selected for similar jobs as previous ones? Your highlights. Like if I create a highlight section in resumes, and depending on the resume, I'll do that depending on how many highlights I have. Some people have not kept good notes and they don't have as many highlights as I would like to see them have. In the highlight section, I will speak to highlights. Okay. Worked in collaboration with 3 different vendors to be able to create an operating tool that helped improve operational processes for fulfilling orders by 33%. In other words, cutting the time by 33%. So, and then I would put the name of the company where that is done. So there's a lot of different ways that can actually be approached, Megan. You want to show why you're great. You want to show why you're successful. And I like to break those out in a highlight section because once this goes through the applicant tracking systems, and hopefully, hopefully a reader will read it too. I mean, but unfortunately, that's the way the world is working with these systems. you want to be able to say, this is why I'm great. I did boom, 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 and boom. This is where I did it, and these are the results. So you can highlight that by breaking that out into a separate section. I hope that was able to address your question. Now, in terms of, I've been talking about highlights for the last several minutes, and I'm going to go a little bit off track, but I'm going to recommend that all of you do this. I tell all of my clients, if you have not already done this, to go out to Walgreens. Yeah, Walgreens. And you remember when we were all in school, we used to have those black and white camouflage notebooks that our teachers used to make us buy, and we had to take notes in our classes and so forth. The really ugly books, sometimes they were lined and sometimes they were not. I recommend to everybody, go out and buy one of those books. And on Friday, right before you actually log off, for the weekend, I want you to write down all of the great things that you did that week. Take you 5 minutes and write it, please. Don't use Notepad in Microsoft Windows. Write it. You'll retain it more, and it will be more meaningful to you. And you'll also start to realize, geez, I've really done a lot of good things. I talk to salespeople, I talk to project managers, I work across the whole spectrum, and I ask them, tell me about your sales, tell me about a product launch. Though I did a product launch, I don't know what the results were. I didn't write them down. Or I ran a marketing campaign, but I have no idea what the return was. Or I managed a technology program from cradle to grave program that we launched, but I don't know how many people it affected. I don't know what the end result was. Buy that book and make it Friday before you log off for the weekend. Write it down, and then when you have to write a resume, you have all those highlights. They're all waiting for you. And also, when your boss asks you why you deserve a raise, you go right back to that. You go right back to that book and say, "I deserve a 15% raise as opposed to the 3% that you're offering me because I did this, 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 and that." So you have it all in your hands. It's critically important, and I recommend to everybody to do that. We all have a Walgreens. I mean, they're all over. There's 30,000 of them or so around the country, I believe. Um, Go to Walgreens, pick one of those up. You'll be glad that you did. Let me go back and take a look at one more question, and then I want to keep kind of moving this forward here. Um, to Andy, can you have skills in 1, 2, or 3 columns? Andy, I like to stay away from columns because sometimes the columns are going to get blocked by the applicant tracking system. Try to put them in rows. It might look prettier in a column and a little bit cleaner, but if it's blocked by the tracking systems, which are the dominant force in the industry right now, it's not doing you very much good. So try to put it into rows, and I'll be able to send you a sample of that if you send me an email afterwards. Let me see, just kind of going through this here. Uh, okay, Kelly, are there free certification programs? I'm going to get to that here in just a second. And Z, what if the lines are whited out? I'm not sure I understand what that means. Perhaps you can be more specific in an email or in the chat, and I'll be able to answer that for you. In going back to to resume prep and so forth, resumes need to be written in a style called the first person modified. I don't want to get too technical with it, but in short, you never want to write, I possess, I did this, I did that. You want to be able to, instead of starting with I did this, you would go, uh, possess, possess excellent technology skills, exhibits a collaborative spirit. So you never want to use the first person I or me. Conversely, in a LinkedIn profile, the best practice is writing it as a management biography. So I would write, or if I was writing my own, I would write, Allan Brown has built a bona fide history of successes managing resume writing projects. It's my company, but I manage the projects, as opposed to I have an extensive history. So in a resume, it should be first person modified, history of, possess, collaborate, as opposed to I did, I offer a history, I collaborate. And in LinkedIn, it's going more about the third person management biography. Too many people mix up LinkedIn. It's not network, it's not social networking. It is business networking. It is not social, it is not Facebook. That's a little bit of a tangent, but I still consider that to be important enough to be able to bring up here. In terms, to the professional experience section, This is a section where I am writing about functions, but I'm also want to show selected highlights. I can't show 20 highlights per job because then we're going to be writing a chapter and not a 1 to 2 page resume. But we only, in this section, we only want to go back 10 to 12 years. Uh, we are not going to be getting our next interviews based upon the work we did in 2009. Um, when I get to the 10th or 12th year, I might put other experience, um, assistant project manager, Sapphire Company, Los Angeles, California. And sometimes I add the dates or without the dates, depending on ageism, and that's all done on a case by case basis. In everybody's case, there where you guys are, to err on the side of conservative as a general statement, keep the dates off. Go back 10 to 12 years, and then if you want to put on that you have additional project management experience, or if it's a reputable company that you work for, or you're going through your network and your network is going to recognize the company you're working for as a company of interest, then you want to be able to add that in. But only go back 10 to 12 years. Um, in this section, you want to use your correct job title. Now, a lot of us, especially, and I know this is very true in the public sector, the job titles are not always very good. I understand that. And they don't always tell what you did for a living. Um, but what you want to do is you want to put the job title that you have, and then in parentheses, you can put down what you think the actual function is. So if it happens to be, media relations associate, which might be in a certain position. I've seen this before, an executive assistant. Then in parentheses, you might go media relations associate. But if the actual job is an executive assistant, then in parentheses, you would go executive assistant, name of company, city, state, date. So that's one way of getting around bad job titles, because many of us have had really bad job titles. When I was working corporate, I had for a short period of time, for about a year or so, I had a nonprofit job title called executive director, where they didn't want to give me the VP title because they didn't want to pay me the VP money, which is, I didn't take it personal. It's the way companies work. But they gave me this executive director, but it's a terrible job title, mostly for nonprofit organizations. So that was the one way I kind of combated that, and then I would be able to explain that in the interview. So, um, the rest of the professional experience, you want to have the name of the position, company, city, state, years, a brief description of the functions of what you did, and then 3 or 4 highlights / success stories. I'd like to keep the functions out as much as I can. After all, I've covered the functions in the core competency section. So make it as success driven and highlight driven as possible. They know if they take a look at this and they say, okay, we know what an executive assistant does, but if you're an executive assistant and you're telling them that you planned out the organization's presence at a Las Vegas trade show that was attended by 50,000 people, you managed the office relocation from a 5,000 square foot facility, let's say 50,000 square foot facility, to a 75,000 square foot facility that went from 1 floor to 2 floors. That's a project and that's a success. If you've managed a budget, let's talk about managed a staff of 15 people, including 5 managers, as well as a $2.5 million operating budget. Those are successes, and that shows the breadth of field of the type of work and the type of management that you've done. We just don't want to be able to put down, manage the staff that a staff of 15 people. It's like, well, that's nice, but give them a little bit more breadth of field. If you've managed the manager, let them know you've managed the manager. It's a little bit different. If you're in sales, we just don't want to say, grew territory into a high revenue generator. We would want to be able to say, grew a territory from 25 to 75 accounts, resulting in an increase in revenue by a factor of 3x to $20 million a year. You see the difference? You're giving them some meat and potatoes to work with, and just not some generic language. All of that comes from, if you document that in your diary, I think that you'll find that to be a very strong, you'll find the diary to be a very strong exercise, and it's going to be making writing your resume much easier. So as the professional summary, the professional experience is obviously it's critically important. Show why you're great. Not Now, don't be modest, but you don't have to be a braggart, but don't be modest. Show why you're great. Show why they have to call you as opposed to everybody else that's applying for the job. Because even after you get through the applicant tracking systems, even though you got through, there might be 75 other people, and they don't call everybody. They don't have an opportunity to do it. They don't have the human resources. So give them every opportunity to give you the call. The education section is interesting because on old style resumes, and I see this in some of the college driven resumes, even some of the bigger universities, the Ivy Leagues and so forth, put the education up on top. Well, Ivy League is so prestigious they can do that, but not every school falls into that category. If you're out of school and you've had one job, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, whatever the case may be, education for your next resume falls to the bottom. You don't want to take up valuable real estate on the top of the resume. It's not going to do you very much good. Education should move to the bottom of the resume. Always have it on, as I mentioned, with the applicant tracking systems. It's critically important. If you don't have it on the applicant tracking systems, you might not get through. If you don't have it on and the reader sees that there's nothing there, you won't get a call. So always have it on there. I always say, have your bachelor. If you have an associate's, great. If you have your bachelor's, you can take off the associates. If you have a master's, keep the bachelor's on, but the associates doesn't have to be there. As part of your education section, you would go, let's say for argument, bachelor's of science, bachelor's of arts, uh, creative writing, Whittier College, Whittier, California. And if there's a special project that you worked on and it's less than 5 years old, you can add that to the education section as well. But always make sure that you have an education section. If there's special training and certification classes you've done, I wouldn't put them in an education section. I would create another section. This also helps with LinkedIn, because with LinkedIn, the more sections you have filled out, the higher in the algorithm. In the resume, the more sections you have filled out. If you add a professional development / training section, it shows your commitment to continual learning, and you separate it out from your actual academic degree. So I would always have that added in here. The professional associations, we see that a lot of us are members of different associations that are related to our careers. If I would go back 10 years on it and put down every membership that you've had over the last 10 years. If it'd be a member, American Marketing Association. If you said director, Southern California Direct Marketing Association. Whatever these different organizations you are, go back 10 years with it. I wouldn't go back any further. One, because you start to show ageism. And secondly, if you haven't done any organizations in the last 10 years, it becomes a little like, what have you done for me lately? Are you staying on top of your game? So if it goes back, don't go, if you haven't done anything in 10 years, don't include it. Because I think that unless you have a substantial amount of current stuff, like I said, it's a what have you done for me lately type of proposal. I consider that to be very important. It's basically all about engagement. And the more engagement you're able to show, the more engagement that you're able to show, the better off that you'll end up being. So um, I am one last thing, and I'm going to go back to addressing some questions here because we're hitting the 12 o'clock hour. I'm not a big believer of having hobbies in a resume or interests. I think that's a weeding out tool. Look, I'm all for community involvement. I'm involved in the community, but if you start putting too much of that on the resume, they're going to start to say, when are you going to have time to be able to to work for us? So if you're a little league championship baseball coach, that's fantastic. You love kids, you love showing leadership, you love baseball, but they're going to be like, you have to leave work at 4 o'clock, 3 days a week. You're starting to weed yourself out. If you're a member of any of any societies as related to your culture, I would keep that out too, because unfortunately, as we all know, racism and bigotry has has and never will go away. Don't give anybody any reason to rule you out for reasons that they never should rule you out for. Going to a couple of questions here, and I'm going to go back to resume prep in just a second. Andy asked, what do you think of an awards and publications section? Andy, I think it's great, and I should have mentioned that before, but make sure it's not one award. If it's one or two awards or one publication, incorporate that in the job history of where you earn the awards or you publish the documents slash chapters, books, whatever that you did. If you have several, then I think it's worthy then I think it's worthy of including. To Yoli, can you include volunteer work if you only do it once a year? You can, but like I said, keep your business and personal separate. Is the volunteer work related to the work that you do? If you are an event planner and if you're an event planner by trade, but you also are doing the local American Heart Association event, doing donor development, yes, you can put that in. But don't put too much emphasis on something like that if it is not career related. That's how I would handle that. Linda, in an interview, how do I credibly address gaps on resume? Lots of short-term jobs. The In terms of short-term jobs, if you are a freelancer and you make a living freelancing, so by definition, you're going to have 3 month stints, 6 month stints, 12 month stints. Try to lump them into one category. So it would be, you know, Linda. I don't know your last name, of course, but Linda Linda, your last name, associates, conducted numerous short-term assignments. Okay, short-term assignments in support of project management initiatives. Selected engagements include, and then you go 1, 2, 3. So you can you want to lump them together because there's nothing worse than having a resume and showing 6 jobs since 2015. I see that a lot in the tech world, and it's not healthy. In the tech world, there are people jumping from job to job for stock options and so forth. And after a while, that catches up. You don't want to be known as a job jumper. Hiring managers do not want to have to do this again 6 months from now. If they're hiring for the job, one of the things they want to do is make sure that the person that they're bringing in is going to be committed for a couple of years. It's bad form for them when they have to go to their boss and say, John, who we hired back in January, just quit. That's bad on everybody. So let's minimize the job jumper and consolidate it and be able to show that you're dedicated to be able to go for a couple of years. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for somebody for the rest of their lives, but they want to be able to show the level of commitment. To Merlin, I thought certain IT positions are immune to ageism. For example, mainframe and IBM server positions. This is an aging group. I don't think that when it comes down to immunity and ageism, I don't think that actually exists. They are always looking for younger because the younger will know more of the current skills, and they're also going to be more cost effective. In other words, they have to pay them less. So I don't, yeah, and when we talk about mainframe, and I know these are older hardware technologies, and some servers are as well. They still want younger. I don't think that I would not consider them to be immune whatsoever. But going back to one last thing with resumes, and I'll continue to address any additional questions. Professional development to me is very important. And I know that sounds cliche, but if you just have your education on there and you haven't shown any additional training classes, certifications that you've taken, whether the company's paid for it or whether you've done it on your own, I think that it's important to have. And because companies want people who are current, especially after COVID, when everybody was working from home, when LinkedIn Learning, their professional development program became more popular. I started adding LinkedIn Learning to certain resumes. LinkedIn Learning classes are a great way to be able to develop some professional skills, whether you're looking for more project management skills, whether you're looking for more skills as related to certain technologies that you use and so forth. Always take these classes and include them as certification of completion project management fundamentals, LinkedIn learning, a certificate of completion, advanced Microsoft Excel, emphasis on pivot tables, and wherever you took that. Sometimes the company pays for it, sometimes you have to pay for it, sometimes it's free, but always make your point and always have that on. I think it's a very important part of a resume, especially when you're talking about jobs where there's a heavy competition. The heavier the competition, okay, the more they're looking for professional development, especially with older workers. So I'd like to address some more of the questions here. If that's, I'm going to go back through some more, so keep them coming in. Um, there's one question here. This goes back to Cameron. Not all the resume examples on my website follow the guidelines and so forth. Most of them actually do. I'd be happy to go over that with you privately. There are some examples that I put up there for career transition resumes or for networking resumes. But those resumes are not necessarily for are going to be going through the applicant tracking system, so that can be a little bit different. This is for case saying in application, an employer can ask for a copy of a driver's license. Uh, which one? Which is one to best free a resume app? I'm sorry. Uh, if I write one resume, I would like to write resumes for multiple positions. The first question, I'm sorry, I don't understand, and I can't really answer that. If you can write one resume, write it for multiple positions. You should not, if you are going for positions that are directly related to each other, you don't need to have more than one resume. You would make the changes to the headline and the keywords, as I discussed before, using the job posting. So the changes that you would have to make to your customized resume, which would serve as your base resume, should be 2 to 3 minutes by changing the headline of the resume to match the title of the position that you're applying for, and by changing out the keywords to make sure that the core competencies slash keywords match, black and white as opposed to gray, the words that are in the job post. And you're doing that for the reader, and you're also doing that for the applicant. You're also doing that for the applicant tracking systems. David asks, can you simulate a column using a row with lined up tabs to make the resume look cleaner? You can, but some of these applicant tracking systems, unfortunately, David, cannot read the multi-column format, and they do get blocked. And then it's going to make it a lot harder for you to be able to make the changes, because if you're writing one word and it has 10 letters and another, as opposed to one word with 6, then you're going to have a formatting that's going to get all whacked out. Try to go with your formatting by rows and not by columns, and I think that you'll end up being much better off. Just scrolling here. So, this is about cover letters, but I'm happy to address this. This is to Linda again. Should I put salary requirements in a cover letter? I believe that nobody should put salary requirements in a cover letter. If you write them in your press, then make it a very wide range. You don't want to get yourself ruled out, okay, for a job based upon what might be considered to be very limiting salary requirements. Salaries are negotiable, and you don't really want to talk salary until you get into the interview and you want the job. And you don't want to give out your references to a hiring manager until you want the job. You try to stay away from any kind of salary requirements in a cover letter, and you stay away from the references. In terms of salary requirements, I'll take it one step further as part of your job search prep. There are 2 websites, and I'll type them in here now, that I would like that you should all be aware of: salary.com and payscale.com. You're going to want to do some salary surveys before you start your job search to see what your worth is in the market and what the market is paying. If you don't do these surveys and you don't participate in this, you're going into your salary negotiations down the line behind the 8 ball. Understand what they pay within certain industries and certain geo markets for the job that you're looking for. It will position you, and you'll have more authority when you're actually out, starting your job, your negotiations. you might do this and you might end up being like, wow, that job, I do that job now and I'm getting paid 20 grand less. Um, why is that? And what you're going to come down to is that salary administration programs, most employees top out in the programs after 3 to 5 years, and that the only way to be able to get paid more is by going out and getting your leverage. So by using salary.com and payscale.com, there are other programs out there, you're going to get to learn a little bit about more what your worth is outside of outside of where you're currently working. It's a vital career management tool and strategy, and I recommend that everybody use it. To Hector, who just posted here, I applied to Jabril, and the question came up within the automated fill out of position. I answer where appropriate for this experience. You're talking, I mean, I would always try to write Hector not applicable or negotiable and leave it at that and leave it vague because you don't want to get yourself disqualified from a job for salaries if you haven't done your homework. Because if you've done your homework and you can see that the salary, they're not going to pay you what you're looking for, you're not going to apply. And if you have done your homework and it's a little bit higher, then you can adjust your number up. You don't want to be considered to be overqualified or underqualified for the position based upon salary. This is a really good question. This is from M about GPAs. I didn't mention anything about GPAs, quite honestly, because I assumed that everybody was probably 3 or 4 years out of school. I would only put GPA on resume if you're a recent grad or one job out of school. It looks sophomoric and reaching if you're 33 years old and you have 10 years of experience in the workforce and you're still putting on a resume that you have a 3.5 GPA. In terms of if you are just out of school, 24, 25 years old, and you want to put your GPA, only make sure if you put the GPA, make sure it's high. Don't put 3.1, 3.1 out of a 4. That's not going to bode you very well. If you were Dean's List and you're just out of school, absolutely. If you graduated with honors, absolutely, I would do that as well. I would add that as well. Michael, moving to LinkedIn, but I don't discuss LinkedIn pictures on resumes, but LinkedIn photos. I have a real issue with LinkedIn on a number of different things, and I write LinkedIn profiles all the time. Photos to me are ageism, and I don't think that they should be asking for photos. It's ageism, it's gender discrimination, it's race discrimination. I don't think they should be asking in regards to ageism because if you have an older worker and obviously we all age and it's a natural thing, and they see the picture, they'll be like he or she doesn't fit our corporate culture. But if you take so conversely, you don't want to have it on there. But LinkedIn wants you to have it on there because it ranks higher in their algorithm. Um, if you're going to have it, if you feel that you have to have a picture, keep it as conservative as you possibly can and show as young a picture as you can so you don't age yourself out. It's a real issue with me. I think it should be illegal, just like with bona fide qualifications of employment of pictures on resumes. That's my own feeling. Unfortunately, LinkedIn didn't ask me. LinkedIn can do an awful lot of things better. You handle that the best you can, and you just show a very conservative picture and keep it simple. No picture downgrades you in the algorithm. A picture of you being of an older worker hurt you for actually for consideration purposes. Um, so it's a great question. It's a controversial answer, to be very frank with you. And I think as you can tell, I don't like it very much. Sheila has a question here. I've been doing contract work for a while and can't seem to get out of the cycle because employers look at my experience as a job hopper. Going back to what I said a few moments ago, take all of that experience and put them under one lump envelope. There's a lot of companies that are only hiring contractors, not only, but mostly hire contractors, especially here in the tech community of San Francisco. Put everything under Sheila, whatever your last name may be, Sheila Associates, and then and just say did project management work on 6 and 12-month contracts for the following companies, and then a one-liner about it, what you actually ended up doing. I don't like it because, as you mentioned here, quote unquote hindrance in full-time opportunities. It is, but one way to be able to combat that and get in the interview is by lumping them under all one sum. And I think if you do that, I think we'll end up working out much better for you. Russell goes, is yahoo.com still a good email address? Is it better to have first and last name, first name, last name.com? If you can get, if like I have my own domain, Allan-Brown.com. I have several emails for my domain. And if one of them happens to be Allan Brown at Allan-Brown.com, that would be fine. Is Yahoo still a good email address? It's getting to the point where it's becoming a little more detrimental because of ageism with Hotmail and AOL, but at least it gets through the filters. It doesn't end up in spam boxes, and it's not quite there yet. In 5 years, I think it will be, just like all the other legacy domains such as pacbell.net, sbcglobal.net, and so forth. If you can use other domains you can use would be if you have a Comcast account or a Cox Communications account, those should be fine as well. And then just going to look for a couple more questions here. Okay, just going back to free certification, Kelly asked again, are there free certification programs, professional development programs you recommend? LinkedIn Learning is the one that I would probably recommend most. There are several out there. You'll have to go find them, but some of them are very rudimentary. I just got an email from somebody asking me to create my own certification program. They would teach me how to do it, and then I could certify people. But to me, that was spam and that was ridiculous. So I want to learn more about it so I can hold a conversation about it, but not something I would necessarily, not necessarily something that I would promote. Uh, Linda asks how much to revise a resume. Linda, if you send me, I don't want to make this into a sales pitch. If you send me information by email, I'd be happy to address that for you. I don't want to go into a whole sales pitch here. Um, Beatrice asks, if you were off of work for an extended period of time due to a health and injury, how do you address that gap in the resume? Um, what I usually do is I just go one line, one line, basically, I don't want to talk about your medical because I don't want them to rule you out because of that. I would say 2017 to 2018 personal sabbatical addressing family affairs. Keep it simple. We all heard of the KISS axiom, keep it simple, stupid, KISS, and also less is more. The less we have, the better off you are. The more you start getting into things and you start getting into explanations, especially on a resume, the less chance you have of getting the interview. Jennifer says, my career dropped off as I followed my husband's career in the Air Force. My jobs in the last 12 years were a lower level volunteer. Is there a way to highlight my higher level management experience prior to that? There is. What I would do here is, while we want to keep the experience that you had on this relevant, I would do instead of a chronological resume starting from most recent to older, I would reverse it and go older to most recent, and that would be the type of resume, which is a very special type of resume. I would keep the dates off. I wouldn't put the dates on. I wouldn't make it functional, which is based upon functions. I would make it upon the successes that you had prior, but reversing the dates. And then you could go into in the interview, and you could explain that you've been traveling the country, with or traveling the world, with your spouse as part of military commitment, and now that things that you're going to be settled in one place for a long period of time, that you should be able to handle that accordingly. It is 12:20. I know you guys are on a little bit of a time crunch. If there's any other questions that I can address, I will put I know we're way down in the thread here, so I will put my email address and my phone number. This is a cell phone. This is a text line as well. I have landlines. I will call back from a landline, but this is a text if you get my voicemail. But this is a text line if you want to be able to send me a text. I will get back to everybody. I might not be able to get back to everybody today, but I will get back to everybody.
Thank you very much, Alan. You answered a lot of questions and provided a lot of information, and some of that information will be in the follow-up email. And for the rest, you can always watch this video when it's posted on our YouTube channel, probably early next week. I know there are still a lot of questions in the Q&A, so if your question didn't get answered and you'd like Alan to address it, he put his email address in the chat, and I will also share that email address with you in the follow-up email. Give me one second. I'm going to post I see the phone number here. I'm going to repost the phone number because I think it went to the wrong chat.
Did I put in the wrong chat? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I got it. So here it is. And I'll also include it in the follow-up email as well. So if you want to get in touch with Alan, there are numerous ways for you to do that. I'm going to post a link to our post-event survey in the chat. We always ask that you fill out the post-event survey. It just takes 1 or 2 minutes, and you can provide us with your feedback about the event and any additional topics you'd like us to cover in the future. If you would do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Once again, thank you, Alan, for this very informative presentation on future-proofing resumes, and thank you all for being here, asking your questions, and we'll see you next time.